we're going to start in Dubai because Stefanos Tsitsipas is the champion. He defeated Felix Auger-Aliassime in quite a high-quality final, actually. Straight set, 6-3, 6-3. Chris, Stefanos Tsitsipas. Last week, we were talking about him. We were sort of, not laughing, but we were sort of having a little laughter to ourselves about the fact that he just lost to Medjedovic, who was on one leg, hobbling to the net, shaking his hand. Fast forward 7 days, and he's won a 500 title for the first time.
He has. What a reversal of fortunes. I think we didn't necessarily see it coming. We were hopeful when we saw the draw that maybe he'd be able to rectify what happened last week, because I don't want to say it was embarrassing last week, but for someone of his quality, he definitely shouldn't have lost when he did. So
people were saying like he was finished, or like this is a downward spiral that he's not going to come out of. I mean, that probably was a little bit extreme at the time, maybe from some tennis fans, but it didn't necessarily feel like we could see the light at the end of the tunnel.
No, and I'm not sure he necessarily did, but he did say when he posted a picture of himself, those of you who haven't seen, it's a giant boat is the trophy, a sort of a very sort of fabulous silver ship. Yes. And for the caption...
It's got Pirates of the Caribbean vibes.
It does. It looks pretty proper.
The Black Pearl.
The Silver Pearl. But
the Silver Pearl.
His caption was, they said my game was sinking, so I got myself a boat. So he's back afloat. His game is back afloat. And the thing that people think did it is that for the eagle-eyed tennis fans, you'd have seen he had a blacked-out racket with the Wilson logo stenciled onto the strings. And normally when we see a blacked-out racket, what this means is that someone is either trialing one of the rackets from that company, or they're secretly looking at making a swap, but they're still under contract with Wilson. And so the eagle-eyed would have been kind of looking at this and thinking, what has he gone for? And we're pretty sure that based on some pictures of it being restrung, Stringing Corner gave us the answers, Joel, that he swapped to a Babolat Pure Aero, either a 98 or a 100 square inch frame from his Wilson Blade 98. So this could be the reason. And the reason why this could be so good for him is because it actually does mean that he's more likely, the sweet spot's bigger, and that's obviously a big problem for him. Also should help with backhand topspin. And it's very sort of reminiscent of that swap that Federer made when he actually went from a 90 to a 97. And people really did credit that move as actually a really big reason why he was able to actually pick up some more slams later on in his career, because it's so much harder sort of with the small head size. So people thought maybe he should have picked it up earlier. And we know the backhand return has always been a problem. And so if this could potentially be a solution, because I'm pretty sure he's going to stick with it having won, do you think Tsitsipas really could be, well, not only back on the boat, but could he be sailing full steam ahead to potentially a major?
Well, I think he's now back into the top 10. So he's definitely built up some momentum. And certainly with the changes that he has made, I think there's opportunity certainly for him to kind of continue on. I think there's probably a few smaller steps before, for Grand Slams, but it certainly feels like he's rectifying some of those weaknesses that we feel like have always been in his game over the last few seasons. I mean, just talking about the final against Felix Auger-Aliassime, because Felix Auger-Aliassime has also been one of the form players this season so far. What did impress you the most from Tsitsipas? You spoke about this racket change. What do you think it brought out the most across the week in Dubai?
I mean, there still were quite a lot of unforced errors from both of the players. So I think the final was more about who won the points that mattered. They both had breakpoint opportunities. Tsitsipas was able to come through. I was just impressed, really, that he was able to take comfort, I think, in the fact that his backhand was that bit more secure, that it was a bit better with his new racket, and clearly that confidence comes through, and in those big moments it makes the difference. Felix was a bit disappointed, I think, with his performance. I think he was expecting a level higher, but I mean, I'm just rejoicing that Tsitsipas no longer has a 11-0 finals record in 500 finals, because I mean, that is one of the most shocking numbers. It is to think that.
It's surprising because he's such a great athlete.
But he wins Masters.
And he wins Masters. He's done well at Grand Slams in the past. But I did enjoy this from Novak Djokovic because he said no one beats Stefanos Tsitsipas 12 times in a row on the 500 tour levels. So well done. So yeah, a very good result for Tsitsipas. And as I say, Felix Auger-Aliassime also playing well. I mean, it was quite an open tournament because Alex de Minaur was the second seed. He went out in the first round to Marin Cilic. And Daniil Medvedev, he left very, very unhappily on the court against Talon Griegspoor with the umpire because they got into a bit of a row. He sort of said to the umpire, "You're soft," on a I think on a violation he gave him based on some words that he said. But yeah, Medvedev not having the greatest of tournaments here.
Yeah, it was a shame because he was up. And I think that is a big problem here is that Medvedev should have won that match, but potentially his temperament really did stop him. He had match points. He could have got it done in 2 sets. And arguably, you'd think that he would have been the favourite to come home with the title. He's still yet to win a title. Hasn't won a title in over a year. So he's searching for form. And it is a bit strange, some of these outbursts that we're seeing. He's still in good spirits after the match. He's laughing about net cam and all these sorts of things. But I mean, he is definitely lashing out a little bit when it came to kind of accusing sort of a double standard against Russians, which did not go down well. And I think that the umpire really did take offense to that. I think that's something that obviously they are, by their code of conduct, definitely not allowed to do. And that is obviously an accusation that you're kind of saying to the umpire that they won't agree with. So you're not going to win any favors there. And I think probably he'd be looking back at that match and thinking, how on earth did I lose it? So we thought this would be a turning point. We thought maybe the 250 would have been a turning point, but he still is titleless. But never count Medvedev out because he's dropped out of the top 10 before. He's not there yet. And then he's come back and reached major finals. So it's a phase. I think he does this every now and then, but I expect to see him very much competitive on the tour in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I saw some stats on social media around his speed of his ground strokes on the court, and actually of the kind of the elite level players, his kind of ground stroke speed's actually quite slow compared to the rest of the field. And I do wonder if like it's not quick enough, but also what's damaging that is the fact that it feels like the court surfaces, the general kind of speed of the courts are getting slower as well. And it doesn't feel like it's helping Medvedev. I mean, as I say, like I was looking at this kind of chart of his speeds versus other players. It was down there with like Alex de Minaur, and you think with Daniil Medvedev that he needs to have a little bit, maybe a bit more purchase when it comes to those kind of rallying strokes from the baseline, because it feels like at the moment it's giving his opponents too much of an opportunity to get a handle on the points.
He has always been about, dragging the points out and been a bit of a counterpuncher in that sort of respect. But you do need 3 points if you're going to come through some of these matches. And if he could have had a bigger serve potentially at certain times when he was down and when he had match points, or whether he was able to hit a bit harder on the return, put more pressure on, maybe he would have forced an error. But at the same time, his game has never necessarily always been to hit the biggest on the tour. I don't think we see him as necessarily a big hitter. And I think that's why he does so well at the slams, because you really do have to beat him normally over 5 sets. That's quite a challenge. And he does. He's come back from 2 sets down before. He's so good at making the long matches work in his favor. So I'm not too concerned by that. I think you can still get good results, but it does probably mean that maybe you're not going to be winning as many matches if you aren't hitting as hard as you used to.
Yeah. Well, one player who does hit big and does hit aggressive, Tomas Machac. He was the champion in Acapulco in Mexico in a final against Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. Again, straight sets, 7-6, 6-2 to Machac. Now, Chris, I didn't know this, but Machac going into this tournament, he was the highest ranked player not to have a tour level title. So he's now ticked that off the checklist. He's into the top 20 as well. 10-2 on the season, 110 lost 2. How impressed were you with Tomas Machac with his week in Acapulco?
I mean, very impressed. I think a lot of people have been thinking this would be coming quite soon. He has really moved up the rankings so quickly. I think probably the thing that was a bigger talking point in this tournament is actually the fact that so many players went down with food poisoning or stomach bugs. There was one day where the likes of Holger Rune, went out, as well as Tommy Paul, Casper Ruud. None of them actually being able to play tennis that day or have to withdraw very early on in their matches.
Mm.
And then Ben Shelton also was affected by this. And there are also rumors that this was also affecting Zverev. So essentially, they dropped like flies in Acapulco. So although I'm not necessarily saying that's the only reason why he won, he is a player of quality and he did beat the players in front of him. But you have to think that you'd expect some of those big names to have made a deeper run here.
Interesting, interesting. I mean, just on Machac, do you see him as just kind of like a where do you think his level is? Do you think he can push even higher than top 20? Do you think he's a top 10 per person perhaps, or do you think that's too high?
I think he's a very, very talented player. I think he's very fun to watch. I think there's definitely potential there. In terms of when I've seen him play in some of the bigger tournaments, I was quite surprised by how easily he went down to Novak Djokovic. So I think it'd be interesting to see what he can
I
do.
had that on upset.
You did. You were really upset by that, actually, weren't you? It was on upset, and you were upset. He has actually beaten Djokovic previously. I think that was last year, but he has had some big results, but not at the majors. So I think probably sits right with me that he's between sort of 15 and 20. Could push to number 14 maybe. But it does depend on getting a bigger result at a slam. I think he would be great on grass.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But definitely an exciting player to watch. And I think a lot of people enjoy watching him play.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a dark horse type threat player that none of the seeds will want to be playing in that kind of round 2, round 3, round 4 match because, yeah, he is a very dangerous opponent. And Davidovich Fokina as well. I mean, he is a very handy player on his day, but he just seems to be coming up short at the moment in finals. And against someone as solid as Machac, I think he was almost kind of getting a little bit frustrated with himself and he wasn't necessarily going for it. I feel like he was playing a little bit within him and he needs to kind of just almost kind of embrace it a bit more, go for it. And see where that takes you because he's just letting his opponent, I think, in those moments, get on top and take all of that momentum.
Yeah, he's not famous either for having the coolest of heads in important moments. And the fact that he was so close to winning his first title so recently, I think that probably would be preying on his mind. Yeah, I do think it would have been. And I mean, he was on bonus time at this tournament because he was, I think, 4 match points down in his first round. So having been match points up to win a title, he then was match points down, won that one. It's all fine doing that in round 1. But when you want to do that, it's probably when you're in a final. So still some good results. It's nice to see him putting the results together. But then again, probably going to end up being a little bit of a Felix Auger-Aliassime in terms of that final record. He might be competing for most losses in finals coming up soon.
His mentality, his tennis is a good level at the moment. It's his mental approach, I think, that's probably holding him back. So we need to see if that will change over the season. If he can do that, who knows? Yeah, maybe he can add some titles to his trophy cabinet. But there was one other tournament on the clay at the Chile Open as part of the Golden Swing. And at this moment, I was expecting to say Sebastian Baez was your winner going back to back, but actually Laslo Djere won and defeated Baez in the final. A real tight tussle, 6-4, 3-6, 7-5. This was Djere's third career title, first in almost 5 years. He's now back into the top 100. So yeah, another decent result for a decent player who, yeah, is a little bit, I think, underappreciated. He's been on the tour for a while. And if you can defeat Baez on the Golden Swing on clay, you know you're playing at a good level.
Definitely. And he hasn't really been at the races for a little while now. I think he does regularly play the Golden Swing. So I think he's probably more of a Golden Swing specialist than we might think. Laslo, but at the same time, I did see him play in Hamburg. I think it was it last year, a couple of years ago, and he made the final there. And I was very impressed by the way that he can hit so well off both wings. Very technically sound. Just never really seemed to have that sort of extra punch to go behind some of his strokes. But I mean, again, you don't want to play him early in a slam, that's for sure. And I mean, Baez, he still won't be too unhappy. The fact he defended the bigger title in Rio. It's not a bad run anyway, isn't it? The Golden Swing for him.
He is like the most Golden Swing specialist of specialists. I mean, he was on an 8-match winning run, a 7 in Santiago as well, because I think he won the title here
He
last
did.
year. So yeah, he just loves playing. He would just wish the Golden Swing was just like a tour of its
It's
own
not
the
a
whole year
swing,
round.
yeah. The
The
golden
Golden Circle,
season, yeah.
the Golden Circle, yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, good performance from him as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure he will try and do something on the hard courts. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but he'll be saving himself for clay to see if he can have a few more upsets, maybe go a bit deeper against some of the more highly ranked opponents. But I'm not thinking he's going to be making a dent on the grass anytime soon.